Captain Marcus Chen stood at attention in the pristine white chamber, his human military uniform looking oddly out of place among the floating crystal formations that served as the Ethereal Council's meeting hall. The translucent beings before him shifted like living aurora, their forms barely maintaining coherence as they deliberated his fate. Human Marcus Chen, the lead counselor's voice resonated directly in his mind, carrying the weight of eons. You have committed an act unprecedented in the history of our alliance. You destroyed the Vorthak dreadnought single-handedly, saving Princess Zarathiel from certain death. Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered against his ribs. 3 days ago he'd been just another fighter pilot assigned to escort duty for the ethereal delegation. Now he stood accused of something he wasn't even sure was a crime. The princess has invoked the ancient rite of Kethmoran, another counselor intoned. Their form flickering with what Marcus had learned indicated emotional distress. She claims you as her chosen mate. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd saved the princess when her transport came under attack, yes, but that was just doing his job. The idea that this entitled him to marriage with literal royalty from the most advanced species in the galaxy was absurd. Counselors, Marcus said carefully, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply following my duty as an escort pilot. I had no knowledge of any cultural implications. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled beings. Indeed, human. This is precisely why the princess's choice is so remarkable. In our history, spanning millions of your years, no being has ever invoked Kethmoran for someone outside their species. The right exists for those who prove themselves worthy through selfless courage in the face of impossible odds. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the chamber's perfect climate control. Surely the princess was just grateful. She probably didn't mean. The princess meant exactly what she said. A new voice interrupted, crystalline and beautiful. Princess Zarathiel materialized in the center of the chamber, her ethereal form more solid than the others, younger, with traces of what humans might recognize as silver threading through her translucent body. She turned to face Marcus, and despite having no true face in human terms, he could feel the intensity of her gaze. I have studied your species extensively, Marcus Chen. I know that humans do not casually risk their lives for strangers. Yet when my ship was crippled when the Vorthak boarding parties broke through, you didn't hesitate. You flew directly into their dreadnought's core, knowing it meant almost certain death. I had to try, Marcus said simply. It was the right thing to do. Another ripple passed through the council, stronger this time. Princess Zarathiel's form brightened noticeably. You see? Even now he doesn't claim credit or boast of his heroism. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what went through your mind when you saw my ship under attack? Marcus thought back to that moment 3 days ago. The sleek ethereal transport had been surrounded by the massive brutal ships of the Vorthak Collective. He'd watched their boarding pods pierce the princess's hull like parasites, knowing that capture meant worse than death for any ethereal, especially royalty. I thought about my sister, Marcus admitted. She's about your age, I think. If someone was threatening her, I'd want someone to try no matter the odds. The silence that followed was profound. Even the gentle humming of the chamber's energy systems seemed to pause. Princess Zarathiel moved closer, her form becoming more solid, more real. You compared me to your family, she said, wonder coloring her telepathic voice. Not to an alien dignitary or a political asset, but to someone you love. The lead counselor's form pulsed with deep, slow rhythms that Marcus had learned indicated serious contemplation. Princess Zarathiel, you understand the implications of your choice. The Kethmoran rite, once invoked, cannot be undone. Are you certain this human is worthy of binding your essence to his for the remainder of his natural life? I am, she replied without hesitation. He proved his worth not through conquest or political maneuvering, but through simple, selfless courage. These are the qualities our people have valued since before we achieved transcendence. Marcus felt the weight of their expectations crushing down on him. Your Highness, I'm honored, truly, but I'm just a fighter pilot. I don't know anything about your culture, your politics, your way of life. How could I possibly be worthy of someone like you? Princess Zarathiel laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You saved my life expecting nothing in return. You show humility even when being offered the highest honor our civilization can bestow. And still you cannot see your own worth. She turned to address the council. Honored ancestors, I have made my choice. Will you honor the ancient ways? The lead counselor's form shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue that Marcus had learned indicated acceptance. Very well. But the human must understand what he's agreeing to. Marcus Chen, the rite of Kethmoran is not merely a marriage as your species understands it. It is a binding of souls, a sharing of essence that will grant you extended life but tie your fate to that of the princess. You will become her anchor to the physical realm, and she will become your guide to the realms beyond. Marcus looked at Princess Zarathiel, this being of pure energy and ancient wisdom who claimed to want him as her mate. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been passing his next flight evaluation. Now he was being offered immortality and marriage to alien royalty. Can I have some time to think about this? He asked. Of course, Princess Zarathiel replied. But Marcus Chen, know this. I did not choose you because you saved me. I chose you because of who you are, the man who would risk everything for a stranger simply because it was right. That is rarer than you know in any species. As the council chamber began to fade around him, Marcus realized his life would never be the same, regardless of his choice. The question was whether he was brave enough to take the leap into the unknown once again. Marcus sat in his assigned quarters aboard the ethereal mothership, staring out at the swirling nebula that served as their current hiding spot. The room was a strange blend of human comfort items and ethereal technology, clearly prepared specifically for him. Someone had even managed to find Earth coffee, though he suspected it was synthesized. A gentle chime announced a visitor, and the wall simply faded away to reveal Princess Zarathiel. She'd taken on a more solid appearance, almost human-like, but retaining the otherworldly glow that marked her true nature. I thought you might want to talk, she said, settling into a chair that materialized to accommodate her. The council can be overwhelming, especially for someone unfamiliar with our ways. Marcus set down his coffee cup, noting how she seemed to study his every movement with genuine curiosity.
Your Highness, I have to ask, why me?
Really, why me? You could have anyone in the galaxy. Beings with powers I can't even imagine. Immortals with wisdom spanning centuries. I'm just a human who got lucky. Zarathiel's form shifted, becoming even more solid, more present. May I show you something? Before he could answer, the room around them changed. They were suddenly floating in space, watching the battle from 3 days ago unfold below them. Marcus saw his own fighter, a tiny speck against the massive Vorthak dreadnought. Watch, Zarathiel said softly. Not the battle, but your bio-readings. Data streams appeared beside his fighter, showing heart rate, neural activity, stress hormones. Marcus was surprised to see that while his heart was racing, his brain patterns showed something unexpected. Calm determination. Not panic. Every other escort pilot fled when they saw the odds, Zarathiel continued. Their readings showed pure terror, which is understandable. The Vorthak dreadnought outgunned your entire squadron 1,000 to 1. But you? Your fear response activated for exactly 3 seconds, then shut down completely. The scene shifted, showing the moment Marcus had made his decision to attack. His fighter had been damaged, weapon systems failing, shields nearly gone. Here, Zarathiel pointed to his neural pattern. Do you see? The moment you decided to ram their core, your brain chemistry changed. You weren't thinking about glory or recognition. You were calculating how to maximize damage while giving me the best chance to escape. Marcus watched himself pilot his dying fighter through impossible defensive fire, threading between massive weapons platforms that should have vaporized him instantly. I remember thinking I wasn't going to make it out. You knew you were going to die, Zarathiel agreed. Yet your final transmission wasn't a battle cry or a goodbye message. Do you remember what you said? The recording played his own voice, crackling through static. Princess, there's an escape pod bay on the port side, deck 12. The explosion should give you a window. Get out of here. Even dying, you were trying to help me survive, Zarathiel said, her voice soft with wonder. In our culture, we call this Keththara, the moment when someone reveals their true nature under ultimate pressure. Most beings, when facing death, think only of themselves. You thought of a stranger. The illusion faded, leaving them back in the quarters. Marcus felt uncomfortable under her intense gaze. Anyone would have done the same. No, Marcus. They wouldn't. Zarathiel stood and moved to the window, her form becoming more translucent as emotion overtook her control. I've lived for 200 of your years. I've seen thousands of beings face mortal danger. Most run, some fight for themselves or their loved ones. A precious few fight for their cause or their people, but you You fought for a stranger you'd met once briefly, during a formal introduction. She turned back to him, and for the first time, Marcus could see what might be called vulnerability in her ethereal features. Do you know what it's like to be me, Marcus? I am the heir to a civilization that has transcended physical existence. Every being who approaches me wants something: political alliance, technological access, or simply the prestige of being associated with ethereal royalty. That must be lonely, Marcus said, meaning it. It is. Until 3 days ago, I believed I would spend eternity surrounded by admirers who saw only my title, my power, my usefulness to their ambitions. Then a human pilot I barely knew decided I was worth dying for, simply because I was a person in danger. Marcus stood and joined her at the window. You're wrong about one thing, though. What's that? You said I barely knew you, but I did know you in a way. During the escort briefing, you asked about Earth customs. Not because you had to, but because you seemed genuinely interested. When we stopped at the observation deck, you asked me about my family, my home. You listened like it actually mattered to you. Zarathiel's form brightened. It did matter. Humans fascinate me. Your species is so young, yet you've accomplished incredible things through sheer determination and cooperation. And despite all your flaws, you still produce individuals capable of extraordinary selflessness. We're not that special, Marcus protested. Every species has heroes, perhaps. But in my experience, human heroes are different. Other species produce heroes who fight for their gods, their nations, their ideologies. Humans produce heroes who fight for strangers simply because it's right. Your own history is full of such people. She moved closer, her ethereal hand almost touching his. When I invoke the Kethmoran rite, I'm not just choosing a mate. I'm declaring that I've found someone worthy of sharing my essence with, someone whose soul resonates with mine across the barriers of species and culture. But what if I'm not who you think I am? Marcus asked. What if that moment was just adrenaline or luck or stupidity? Zarathiel smiled, an expression that somehow translated perfectly despite her alien nature. Then I'll have spent eternity with someone brave enough to be stupid for a stranger's sake. I can think of worse fates. The wall chimed again, and they both turned as a new presence made itself known. The lead counselor materialized, his form heavy with formality. Princess Human Marcus Chen, the council has reached a decision regarding the Kethmoran rite. However, there are complications you must be made aware of. The Vorthak Collective has declared the human a priority target. They seek revenge for the destruction of their dreadnought. Furthermore, several member worlds of the Galactic Alliance are questioning whether a human can truly be trusted with ethereal secrets. Marcus felt his heart sink. Politics, of course it would come down to politics. What does that mean for us? Zarathiel asked, her form becoming more solid as determination replaced vulnerability. It means, Princess, that your choice may trigger consequences none of us anticipated. The question is whether the human is prepared to face them. All eyes turned to Marcus. Once again, he was being asked to make a choice that could change everything. Not just for himself, but for potentially millions of beings across the galaxy. The simple act of saving one person's life was about to become something much larger and more dangerous. And somehow, looking at Princess Zarathiel's hopeful expression, Marcus realized he was starting to think it might be worth it. The Galactic Alliance Assembly was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Representatives from 100 different worlds filled the massive amphitheater, their forms ranging from crystalline beings like the ethereals to massive gas cloud entities that communicated through color changes. The babel of languages, telepathic emanations, and energy signatures created a symphony of alien politics. Marcus stood beside Princess Zarathiel at the speaker's podium, acutely aware that his simple human appearance drew stares from every corner of the assembly. Some were curious, others dismissive, and a few openly hostile. The chair recognizes Ambassador Vexthok of the Hegemony Coalition, announced the session controller, a floating mechanical construct that served as neutral moderator. A massive, beetle-like creature rose on multiple legs, its chitinous shell gleaming under the assembly's lights. Honored delegates, we gather today to address an unprecedented situation. The ethereal Princess Zarathiel has invoked an ancient right to bond with a human. This decision threatens the very foundation of our alliance structure. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Marcus felt Zarathiel's hand slip into his, her touch warm despite her ethereal nature. The humans, Vexthok continued, are a young species, barely 10,000 years old, still prone to violent conflict among themselves. How can we trust such a primitive being with ethereal secrets? What guarantee do we have that he won't use this bond to advance his own species' interests? The Hegemony Coalition speaks from ignorance, Princess Zarathiel replied, her voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber without amplification. They judge humanity by age rather than accomplishment. In their brief existence, humans have ended slavery on 17 worlds, prevented 3 genocides, and consistently chosen cooperation over conquest when given the opportunity. A new voice boomed across the chamber. Pretty words, Princess, but words are not deeds. Marcus turned to see a massive humanoid figure rising from the military section. General Korath of the Titan Confederacy, his rocky hide scarred from 1,000 battles. This human destroyed a Vorthak dreadnought, yes, but in doing so he violated the military engagement protocol. He acted without orders, without authorization. Such recklessness could have triggered a full-scale war. Yet it didn't, Marcus said, surprising himself by speaking up. General Korath, with respect, the Vorthak ship was already attacking. They'd declared the princess a military target. I simply responded to an active threat. Korath's stone features shifted into what might have been a smile. You speak boldly for someone facing the judgment of beings who have waged war across the galaxy for millennia. Tell me, human, what gives you the right to make military decisions that could affect billions of lives? Marcus felt the weight of the assembly's attention, but Zarathiel's presence beside him provided unexpected strength. General, 3 days ago I was just a fighter pilot doing my job. I didn't think about galactic politics or military protocols. I saw someone in danger and I acted. If that makes me reckless, then I accept that judgment. But you don't regret it, observed another delegate, this one of flowing energy being from the Nexus Collective. Even knowing the consequences, you would do the same again. Yes, Marcus answered without hesitation. If someone's life was at stake, I'd do it again. The assembly erupted in debate. Some delegates praised his honesty, while others called it proof of human unpredictability. Through it all, Marcus noticed something interesting. The younger delegates, regardless of species, seemed more supportive than their elders. Silence. The session controller's mechanical voice cut through the chaos. The chair recognizes Captain Vorthak Prime of the collective hive mind. A collective shiver ran through the assembly as one of the most feared beings in the galaxy rose to speak. The Vorthak were the ancient enemies of peace, conquerors who viewed all other life as resources to be harvested. Fellow beings. Vorthak Prime's multiple voices spoke in perfect unison. The humans' actions 3 days ago cost us a dreadnought and 17,000 warriors. By rights, we should demand his life as compensation. Marcus felt his throat tighten, but he forced himself to stand straight. Beside him, Zarathiel's form blazed brighter, ready to defend him. However, Vorthak Prime continued, we must acknowledge a truth that shames us. This single human in a damaged fighter craft accomplished what entire fleets have failed to do. He penetrated our defenses, destroyed our most powerful ship, and escaped alive. Such skill and courage, even from an enemy, deserves recognition. The assembly fell silent. Even Marcus couldn't hide his shock. Therefore, the collective representative continued. The Vorthak Collective withdraws all demands for retaliation. Instead, we offer the human Marcus Chen honorary membership in our warriors' circle. He has proven himself in battle according to our most ancient traditions. The silence stretched until Princess Zarathiel spoke. You offer him membership in a group dedicated to conquest and destruction. Do you think this supports his character? Princess, you misunderstand our offer, Vorthak Prime replied. The warrior's circle is not about conquest. It is about recognizing those who fight not for gain or glory, but for something greater than themselves. In 10,000 years, only 37 beings have been offered such membership. Each proved themselves capable of sacrifice for principles they held dear. Marcus felt overwhelmed. 3 days ago, he'd been an unknown pilot, and now ancient enemies were offering him honors he didn't understand. I'm grateful for the recognition, he said carefully, but I'm not sure I understand what this means. It means, said a new voice, that even your enemies recognize your worth. The speaker was Ambassador Yilthara of the Diplomatic Corps, an elegant being whose crystal body reflected the chamber's lights in fascinating patterns. Delegates, we debate whether this human is worthy of binding with ethereal royalty, yet we ignore the evidence before us. The Vorthak, who respect only strength, offer him membership in their elite circle. The princess herself, whose wisdom spans centuries, chose him above all others. When will we admit that perhaps our prejudices cloud our judgment? But what about the precedent? Called out another delegate. If we allow this, what prevents every species from claiming similar rights? Nothing, Princess Zarathiel said firmly. And that's exactly the point. The Kethmoran right has always been about recognizing worth regardless of origin. If other beings prove themselves worthy through selfless courage, they should be honored equally. Marcus looked around the assembly, seeing the mixture of doubt, curiosity, and growing acceptance on alien faces. He realized this moment was about more than just his relationship with the princess. It was about whether the galaxy was ready to judge beings by their actions rather than their species. Delegates, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I can't promise I'll make the right decisions every time. I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise that I'll always try to do what's right, regardless of the personal cost. If that's not enough, then I understand your concerns. The chamber fell silent again as delegates considered his words. Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him, knowing that whatever happened next would reshape relationships between species across the galaxy. The session controller's mechanical voice broke the silence. The assembly will now vote on whether to recognize the validity of the Kethmoran right, as invoked by Princess Zarathiel. All in favor? Lights began to appear throughout the chamber, each representing a delegate's vote. Marcus held his breath as the count climbed, watched as the future of his relationship with Zarathiel, and possibly the future of human-alien relations, was decided by beings he'd never met before this day. The vote tally hung in the air above the assembly like a digital constellation. Marcus watched the numbers climb with growing amazement. They were winning, but barely. Each additional vote felt like a small miracle. 63 in favor, 37 opposed. The session controller announced. The motion carries. The Kethmoran right is recognized as valid. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates cheered while others voiced angry protests. Through it all, Marcus felt Zarathiel's hand squeeze his, her ethereal form practically glowing with joy. However, the session controller continued, its mechanical voice cutting through the noise. By treaty law, any significant alliance change must include a trial period. The bonding will be provisional for 1 standard year, during which time both parties must prove their commitment benefits galactic stability. Princess Zarathiel's light dimmed slightly. A trial period? This is unprecedented. The Kethmoran right has never been subject to political approval. These are unprecedented circumstances. Ambassador Vexthok interjected, his beetle-like form clicking with satisfaction. Surely the princess understands the need for caution when dealing with such a young species. Marcus felt his temper rising. With respect, Ambassador, I'm standing right here. If you have concerns about my species, maybe you should address them to me directly. The massive alien turned multiple eyes toward him. Very well, human. My concern is simple. Your species' history shows a pattern of violence and betrayal. Even among yourselves, humans cannot maintain peace. Why should we trust you with our most sacred bonds? Because, Marcus said, surprising himself with his calm tone, our history also shows that we learn from our mistakes. Every human generation tries to be better than the last. We don't claim to be perfect, but we never stop trying to improve. A new voice joined the debate. The human speaks truth. Captain Irelthak of the Starborn Free Companies materialized near the podium, her crystalline form shifting through several colors. My ships have worked alongside human crews for 15 years. They are loyal allies and fierce protectors of those they consider friends. One captain's opinion hardly constitutes evidence, Vexthok replied dismissively. Then perhaps you'd prefer statistical analysis, said Dr. Kethmiran, the Ethereal Council's chief researcher. His ancient form appeared beside Princess Zarathiel, carrying a data crystal that projected holographic charts. Human military units have the lowest desertion rate of any Alliance species. Human diplomatic missions have the highest success rate in peaceful conflict resolution. Human colonies have eliminated slavery wherever they've established governance. Marcus watched in fascination as delegate after delegate rose to share their experiences with humanity. Some were critical, but many praised human adaptability, creativity, and moral flexibility. He'd never realized how closely other species had been watching his people. The statistics are impressive, admitted General Korath, but statistics don't reveal character. Princess, How do you respond to concerns that this human might change once he gains access to ethereal knowledge and longevity? Princess Zarathiel moved closer to the podium, her form becoming more solid and radiant. General, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the Kethmoran bond. It's not simply a marriage or political alliance. It's a joining of souls that makes deception impossible between the bonded pair. If Marcus harbors any hidden ambitions or dark intentions, I would know them the moment our bond is complete. And if he develops such intentions later, pressed another delegate, then our bond would break, Zarathiel replied simply. The right only works between those whose fundamental nature harmonizes. If either party betrays the core values that created the bond, the connection dissolves and both suffer tremendous pain. Marcus felt a chill. You didn't mention that part before. Because I'm not worried about it, she said, turning to face him fully.
Marcus, in 3 days I've seen you risk your life for a stranger, show humility when offered honors, and remain honest even when lies might serve you better.
Your character is exactly what I believed it to be. But what if I change? What if becoming immortal, gaining access to advanced technology makes me into someone different? Zarathiel's form brightened with what he was learning to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. Then you'll change together with me as all bonded pairs do. The Kethmoran doesn't freeze you in time, Marcus. It ensures you grow in harmony with your partner. The debate continued for hours, covering everything from diplomatic protocols to military implications. Marcus answered question after question, sometimes confidently, sometimes admitting his ignorance. Through it all, he noticed something interesting. The more he spoke, the more delegates seemed to warm to him. Finally, Ambassador Yilthara called for order. Delegates, we've heard extensive testimony. I move that we accept the trial period proposal and allow the bonding to proceed under supervision. Supervised how? Marcus asked. You and the princess will be assigned joint missions throughout the year, the session controller explained. Your actions will be monitored and evaluated. If at any point your bond proves detrimental to galactic stability, the marriage will be dissolved. Marcus looked at Princess Zarathiel, seeing both excitement and apprehension in her ethereal features. What kind of missions? Diplomatic contacts with newly discovered civilizations, General Korath explained. Peaceful intervention in developing conflicts. Humanitarian relief operations. Tasks that will test your judgment, your compatibility, and your commitment to alliance values. Essentially, added Vexthok with obvious reluctance, you'll be representing not just your individual species, but the concept of interspecies cooperation itself. Your success or failure will influence how the galaxy views such bonds for generations. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a lead blanket. 1 year ago, his biggest concern had been whether he'd get promoted to squadron leader. Now he was being asked to become a symbol for interspecies unity across the entire galaxy. No pressure or anything, he muttered. Princess Zarathiel moved closer, her ethereal hand resting gently on his arm. Marcus, we don't have to accept these conditions. The Kethmoran right is sacred to my people. We could refuse the trial period and let the political consequences fall where they may. Marcus looked around the assembly, seeing the mixture of hope and skepticism on alien faces, representing billions of beings across the galaxy. He thought about his sister back on Earth, about the friends he'd served with, about the future his species might have among the stars. No, he said finally. If we're going to do this, we might as well prove it's the right choice. I accept the trial period. A visible wave of surprise rippled through the assembly. Even some of his critics seemed taken aback by his willingness to submit to evaluation. Very well, the session controller announced. The trial bonding of Princess Zarathiel and human Marcus Chen will commence immediately, with full evaluation protocols in effect. May this union prove beneficial to all Alliance members. As the assembly began to disperse, Marcus realized the easy part was over. Now came the real challenge, proving that love could indeed transcend the boundaries of species, culture, and evolution itself. Beside him, Princess Zarathiel radiated happiness despite the conditions placed on their bond. Ready to change the galaxy, Marcus Chen? Marcus squeezed her ethereal hand, feeling the strange warmth of her touch. As ready as anyone can be for the impossible, I guess. What neither of them knew was that their first test was already approaching, hidden in the void between stars where ancient enemies prepared to challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. The bonding ceremony took place on the ethereal homeworld of Lumthara, within a temple that predated human civilization by millions of years. Marcus stood in the center of a crystalline chamber, wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to shift and flow like liquid starlight. The fabric felt alive against his skin, responding to his emotions with subtle changes in color and texture. Around him, hundreds of ethereal witnesses floated in perfect silence, their forms creating a constellation of living light. The ancient rituals were being broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who saw this moment as either historic breakthrough or dangerous precedent. Princess Zarathiel approached through the assembled crowd, her form more radiant than Marcus had ever seen it. She wore no physical garments, but her ethereal body was decorated with patterns of pure energy that told the story of her lineage stretching back to the dawn of her species. Marcus Chen, intoned the high celebrant, an ancient ethereal whose form was barely coherent after eons of existence. Do you understand what you are about to undertake? I think so, Marcus replied, then caught himself. I mean, yes, I accept the bond and its responsibilities. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembly. The high celebrant's form brightened slightly. Honesty even in sacred moments. This bodes well, Princess Zarathiel. Do you freely choose this bond, knowing it cannot be undone while both parties live? I do, she replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the crystal chamber. I choose Marcus Chen as my eternal companion, my anchor to the physical realm, my partner in all things. The high celebrant raised what passed for arms, and the chamber filled with a low, thrumming energy that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Then let the bonding begin. Human Marcus Chen, extend your consciousness toward your chosen mate. Marcus had been prepared for this moment through 3 days of intensive meditation training, but nothing could have readied him for the reality. As he opened his mind, he felt Zarathiel's presence flowing into his thoughts like warm honey. Her memories, emotions, and very essence began to merge with his own. Suddenly he could see through her eyes, experience the universe as an ethereal did. The physical world became just one layer of a complex multidimensional reality. Energy patterns danced through space, connecting all living things in an intricate web of cause and effect. The beauty was overwhelming, but more than that, he could feel Zarathiel's emotions directly. Her love for him was like standing in sunlight, warm, enveloping, unconditional. He felt her joy at his wonder, her amusement at his very human reaction to transcendent experience. Now, Princess, the high celebrant continued, accept your mate's essence as your own. The flow reversed, and Marcus felt Zarathiel experiencing his memories. Through their bond, he sensed her amazement at the intensity of human emotion, the passionate way his species experienced everything from joy to sorrow. She marveled at his memories of Earth, blue skies, ocean waves, the simple pleasure of physical sensation. Most importantly, she felt his love for her, different from her own but equally strong. Where her love was like sunlight, his was like gravity, constant, fundamental, holding everything together. The merging deepened. Marcus found himself understanding things that should have been beyond human comprehension. Ethereal history unfolded in his mind like a vast library suddenly made accessible. Scientific principles that had puzzled humanity for centuries became clear and obvious. But with knowledge came responsibility. He could feel the weight of ethereal secrets, the burden of information that could reshape galactic civilization. The trust they were placing in him was staggering. It's too much, he whispered, overwhelmed by the scope of what he was gaining. No, Zarathiel's voice came directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. It's exactly right. Feel how naturally you're adapting, how easily our minds mesh together. This is what I saw in you, Marcus, the ability to grow without losing who you are. The final phase began, and Marcus felt his own consciousness expanding. His human lifespan, which had seemed brief even to him, stretched forward through centuries. He would live as long as Zarathiel chose to remain in physical form, their essences bound together across time and space. It is done, the high celebrant announced. Princess Zarathiel and human Marcus Chen are now bonded under the ancient law. Let all beings witness and acknowledge this union. The chamber erupted in a symphony of energy patterns as hundreds of ethereals expressed their approval. Marcus staggered slightly. still adjusting to the permanent presence of another consciousness intertwined with his own. "How do you feel?" Zarathiel asked, both aloud and directly into his mind. "Different," Marcus admitted. "But still myself, if that makes sense, just more." Before Zarathiel could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the temple. The ceremonial atmosphere vanished instantly as emergency lights bathed the chamber in harsh red illumination. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded, his military training kicking in despite the sacred surroundings. Through their bond, he felt Zarathiel accessing information networks with her expanded consciousness. Her alarm flooded through him a second before she spoke. "It's the Devourers," she said, her form flickering with distress. "They've broken through the barrier at the galaxy's edge. A scouting force is headed directly for Lumthara." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Even humans knew about the Devourers, ancient machines from beyond the galaxy that consumed entire civilizations, converting all matter into more of themselves. They'd been held back by a massive energy barrier maintained by all the galaxy's species working together. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 6 hours, came the grim reply from the High Celebrant. "The defense fleets are mobilizing, but they won't be enough. The Devourer scouts alone outgun anything we have." Through their new bond, Marcus felt Zarathiel's mind racing through possibilities. Her enhanced consciousness could process information at incredible speeds, but even she couldn't find a solution to this threat. "There is one option," she said slowly, her mental voice heavy with reluctance. "The Ethereal Fleet Command has a prototype weapon, a consciousness-guided missile that requires a bonded pair to operate. One partner provides targeting data while the other guides the weapon through enemy defenses." "Sounds dangerous," Marcus observed. "It is. The mental strain of controlling the weapon at interstellar distances has killed every test crew that attempted it." Marcus felt the weight of their situation settling around them. Their bonding ceremony had become their trial by fire, literally. Their first test as a married couple would be to save the ethereal homeworld from annihilation. "Well," he said, trying to inject some levity into the dire situation, "I guess our honeymoon just got interesting. Despite everything." Zarathiel's form brightened with genuine amusement. "You're remarkable, Marcus Chen. Faced with impossible odds and you're making jokes." "It's either laugh or panic," he replied. "And panic won't help us save your world." Around them, the temple was transforming as ancient protocols activated. The ceremonial chamber reconfigured itself into a command center, with holographic displays showing the approaching Devourer fleet. The assembled ethereals shifted from celebration to grim determination. "Princess," called Fleet Commander Veltharn, his form crackling with military authority. "The prototype weapon is being prepared. Are you certain you wish to attempt this? The bonding ritual should have left you both exhausted." Marcus looked at Zarathiel, seeing his own determination reflected in her ethereal features. Through their bond, he could feel her resolve matching his own. "We're certain," they said in perfect unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that made several ethereals step back in surprise. As they prepared to face their first challenge as a bonded pair, Marcus realized that all the political debates and trials meant nothing compared to this moment. In the next few hours, they would either prove that their union could save lives, or they would die together trying. Either way, he thought as he followed his wife toward their destiny. It beat spending eternity wondering what might have been. The prototype weapon bay existed in a space between dimensions, accessible only through ethereal technology that bent reality itself. Marcus found himself standing beside Zarathiel in front of a device that defied description. Part machine, part living energy, part pure mathematics given form. "The consciousness sphere," Fleet Commander Veltharn explained, his form rippling with nervous energy. "It exists simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. When activated, it strikes not just the physical target but the very concepts that define it. A single successful hit can erase a Devourer construct from existence entirely." Marcus studied the weapon, his newly enhanced senses picking up information his human brain shouldn't have been able to process. Through his bond with Zarathiel, he could perceive the mathematical principles underlying its construction, equations that describe the fundamental nature of reality itself. "The catch," Commander Veltharn continued, "is that it requires perfect synchronization between two bonded minds. One partner must maintain the targeting matrix, while the other guides the weapon through dimensional space. The mental strain is enormous. Previous test crews suffered complete consciousness collapse within minutes. How were they different from us? Zarathiel asked, though Marcus could feel through their bond that she already suspected the answer. They were all ethereal pairs, bonded for decades or centuries. Their minds had grown so similar, they couldn't maintain the necessary differentiation between roles. You and Marcus, however, represent two completely different types of consciousness. Your bond is strong enough for synchronization, but your minds remain distinct enough for role separation. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. You're saying we might succeed precisely because we're different species. Exactly. The weapon requires what we call unified duality. Two minds working as one while maintaining their individual perspectives. Through their bond, Marcus felt Zarathiel's mixture of hope and terror. The theoretical possibility was there, but theory and practice were very different things when lives hung in the balance. How much time do we have to learn this? Marcus asked. None, Commander Veltharn replied grimly. The Devourer scouts will arrive in 3 hours. The weapon must be fired before they can establish a beachhead on Lumthara. Holographic displays around them showed the approaching enemy. The Devourer scouts looked like living nightmares, massive constructs of dark metal and corrupted energy that seemed to devour light itself. Each one was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. All right, Marcus said, forcing calm into his voice. Walk us through the process. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of intensive training. Marcus learned to project his consciousness into the weapon's targeting matrix, while Zarathiel practiced guiding the spear through dimensional obstacles. The process was exhausting even in simulation. Marcus felt like his brain was being stretched to its breaking point. But something remarkable happened as they worked together. Their bond, so new it still felt strange, began to deepen and strengthen under pressure. Marcus found he could anticipate Zarathiel's movements, while she seemed to know instinctively when he needed support maintaining the targeting lock. Devourer scouts have entered the system, came the announcement that chilled everyone present. First wave consists of 3 units heading directly for Lumthara. Impact in 40 minutes. Marcus and Zarathiel took their positions at the weapon's interface. Physical controls were meaningless here. Everything depended on mental connection and spiritual harmony. As they joined hands, Marcus felt their bond expand to encompass the weapon itself. I can see them, Zarathiel whispered, her consciousness extending across space to perceive the approaching enemy. They're magnificent and terrible, ancient beyond measure, driven by hunger that spans galaxies. Through their bond, Marcus shared her vision. The Devourer scouts moved through space like living shadows, leaving traces of consumed reality in their wake. Where they passed, stars dimmed and space itself seemed to weep. Target the lead scout, Commander Veltharn instructed. If we can destroy it, the others might retreat to assess the threat. Marcus focused his enhanced perception on the enemy flagship, feeling the targeting matrix lock onto its dimensional signature. The effort required was staggering, like trying to hold onto a star with his bare hands. I have lock, he reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chamber's perfect climate control. Spear ready for guidance, Zarathiel announced, her form becoming more translucent as she extended her consciousness into dimensional space. Fire, ordered Commander Veltharn. The consciousness spear launched across impossible distances, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Marcus maintained the target lock while Zarathiel guided it through obstacles that existed as pure mathematics, rather than physical barriers. Through their bond, Marcus experienced the weapon's journey. It passed through realms where thought had substance, where emotion took physical form, where the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Zarathiel navigated these spaces with instinctive grace, her consciousness dancing between realities like a leaf on cosmic winds. But the strain was enormous. Marcus felt his human mind beginning to crack under the pressure of maintaining lock across dimensional barriers. His vision blurred and he tasted blood from a bitten tongue. Marcus, Zarathiel's mental voice carried both concern and determination. Let me help carry the load. She reached across their bond, sharing the targeting burden. For a moment that lasted an eternity, they became truly one consciousness. Neither human nor ethereal, but something entirely new. In that fusion, Marcus understood the true nature of their bond. They weren't just married. They were the first members of a new kind of being, one that combined the best aspects of both species. The consciousness spear struck its target with impossible force. The lead Devourer scout simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but erased from reality so completely that the universe forgot it had ever been there. The remaining scouts immediately halted their advance. For long moments they hung in space as if processing this unprecedented development. Then to everyone's amazement they began to withdraw. "Impossible," breathed Commander Veltharn. "They're retreating." Devourers never retreat. Through the weapon's lingering connection, Marcus caught fragments of the enemy's communications. The Devourers were ancient, but they weren't mindless. They recognized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. A new type of consciousness had emerged that could threaten them directly. "They'll be back," Zarathiel said as she and Marcus disconnected from the weapon. "But not today. We've bought time for the galaxy to prepare." Marcus collapsed into the nearest chair, his entire body shaking from exhaustion. Zarathiel materialized beside him, her own form flickering with fatigue. "How do you feel?" she asked, both aloud and through their bond. "Like I've been turned inside out and put back together," Marcus admitted. "But alive. We're alive, your world is safe, and we actually pulled it off." "More than that," Commander Veltharn announced, reviewing the sensor data. "Your successful use of the consciousness spear has proven something we've theorized about for centuries. Bonded pairs from different species don't just add their capabilities together, they create entirely new possibilities." Word of their success spread across the galaxy within hours. The trial period that had seemed so important just days ago was quietly forgotten, as being irrelevant. They had proven their worth in the most dramatic way possible. As they recovered in their quarters aboard the ethereal flagship, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. A week ago he'd been a simple fighter pilot. Now he was bonded to an ethereal princess, had access to technology and knowledge beyond human imagination, and had helped save a civilization from extinction. "Any regrets?" Zarathiel asked, her form solid and warm beside him. Marcus considered the question seriously. His old life was gone forever. He would outlive everyone he'd ever known on Earth. He was now responsible for bridging the gap between species across the galaxy. The pressure was enormous. "None," he said finally. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Through their bond, he felt her joy at his answer. They had a future now, centuries or millennia together, exploring the galaxy and helping other species understand that love could indeed transcend any barrier. "So," Marcus said, pulling her closer, "what do we do for our next act?" Zarathiel's laugh was like music in the quantum foam. "I was thinking we might try something really challenging. More challenging than fighting ancient cosmic devourers." "Much more," she replied with mock seriousness. "I was thinking we could try being married." As they laughed together, their bond resonating with shared joy, Marcus realized that some challenges were worth spending eternity trying to master. And with Zarathiel beside him, forever didn't seem nearly long enough.